So you're telling me that nobody else can hear you. What if you just shout? Yeah, that'd probably work. Yeah, just shout, and then they'll hear you, and they won't think I'm crazy or something. Oh, hey, Alex. Hey, how's it going?
Oh, hey, Adam. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Oh, not bad. How's your friend?
What friend?
And welcome to this episode of the 800's with that little crazy stalemate. I am your lovely co-host, Alex, and you just heard from my possibly going mad co-host, Adam. And quick shout out to our amazing tech guy, Alan, behind the scenes. Thank you very much for getting us running a little bit late because of some technical difficulties, but thank you for working through them so that we can bring this fine content to you viewers. All right, so with that, why don't we just slide on into our plugs for the week?
Yeah. Sorry, I was messing with my keyboard. Plugs. Yes, we have plugs. We upload all these on YouTube. You should check it out. The link's below the video. If you joined us before the show started, you heard Fearless First by Incompetech. Check out their other awesome music at incompetech.filmmusic.io. We love them. They're cool. Let's see. Patreon. We have a Patreon. You should give us money. The link's below the video. I'm not crazy. Sorry, it's just hard to think with all these voices in my head. dmstable.com/audible if you want to join Audible and listen to audiobooks like I do. That's the cool way to read books. Just listen to them. So yeah, do that. I'm gonna say that's it because this isn't going well.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll get them a little bit better on the back end. But for now, this week on the 800s, we'll be discussing our first book in our spooktacular horror month, Alice by Christina Henry. Our author beckons us to join her in a reimagining of and sequel to Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. Only this time, Wonderland is not a place of color and whimsy, but one of darkness and nightmares. Nothing is as it seems, nor how you might remember, as we follow Alice back down her terrifying rabbit hole.
That was a good synopsis of the book.
Don't want to give away too much spoilers.
Yeah, this is your first time joining us on the 800s. I'll give you a quick rundown of how things work here. Essentially, we'll talk about a topic of choice. You'll see it on your screen whenever we're talking about it. So if you step away, you can come back and see what we're discussing. If you guys have something you want to discuss, put it in chat and we'll definitely pull it out and chat about it. Otherwise, Alex and I will just pitch conversations and topics back and forth, and we'll look forward to your guys' comments about what you think on whatever topic we're talking about. So make sure you hit them comments in there, and we'll pay attention and grab stuff to talk about and things.
Yes, pay attention. That thing. And as per usual, our quick reminder that this is not intended to be a kid's show. We do gear towards adults, sometimes with language, and in this case, very much in particular, some very adult themes. Bring kids around only at your own discretion. But also we're trying to create a fun and supportive community. It's for people to explore their hobbies, nerdy and otherwise. And we don't want anybody to feel judged or like they can't just be themselves. So in sum, be nice or fuck right off.
Very well, very well. Let's get right into it. Alex and chat, what were your first impressions of the book?
I knew this was going to be a creepy book. Not just because it's our horror month, but because just from the beginning, it's meant to be like, what if it was a bad trip instead of a good one? um, but holy hell, did this take things to another level. It was, I think, almost as much of a mind fuck for us as readers as it was for Alice, if not possibly more. So I honestly thought it was really creative, and it used the strengths of like building off of pre-built characters and a pre-built story and taking it in a pretty unique direction that feels both fantastical and more realistic. Like there's something that could explain it all. So I thought it was a pretty fun read. There are some parts that are tough to get through, and I imagine even more so for those who have experienced the types of things that Alice went through. But honestly, I thought it did a really good job of taking something from my childhood and turning it about as dark and sinister as it can get.
Yeah, well said. Especially considering, I mean, I don't know word count or anything, but audio count. Alice in Wonderland is only a couple to a few hours long, and this was what, 8 or 9, 8 probably. So the fact that it just expanded that much on an already existent story was kind of cool. For me though, like right off the bat, I thought the psych ward was kind of neat setting, and there was a really good setup with characters for Alice and Hatcher. My big thing though was like when they escaped, it felt kind of rough going with the okay, what next bit. And I was a little nervous that it wouldn't get back on track, but it definitely got there and strung you along.
Yeah, I mean, but think about it this way. If you suddenly broke out of a psych ward that you'd been in for years, like, would you know exactly what you were going to do the
Yeah.
second that you got out? Like, I thought they did a good job of doing like a nice, like, oh, we need to orient ourselves because we're no longer stuck inside and we are still a bit hoo.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I thought like they really, one of the unique things that I thought that the author did for this book was doing a good job of taking those, pre-built elements and both expanding on them and reimagining them at the same time, which is like I imagine to be a really tough balance to strike, because you have to take things that characters that people know so well, put a dark twist on them, and push a new storyline. So I thought it was really cool the way that was done. Seems like we got a lot going on in chat
Yeah.
about, in particular, the Hatcher, well, Hatcher, or the Mad Hatcher, as I think a fair amount of us came up upon. Yeah, he was a really fun character to like. I think that's a perfect example of a character that got reimagined and had a different story put to him in a unique way that still fits with the overall aesthetic of
Right, yeah.
Through the Looking Glass.
Well, let's talk about that then. What did you think of Hatcher?
I was like, with the name, I immediately thought, oh, this is the Mad Hatter character, especially because he was met at a psych hospital.
Yeah, yeah.
And presumably this was real life, like what if this stuff was real, like not just completely fantastical. And at first I thought this was going to be he was going to be both the Mad Hatter and the Jabberwock, like not just the Jabberwock was something possessing him. I thought it was him.
Yeah.
Like fully was him at the same time, and it was just kind of like a dissociative identity type of thing. But I thought it was a
that's
really
what I was
smart
thinking, too.
choice to put him in the psych ward with her, because it presents at least a small element of doubt into whether or not this is magical, or if it's just the imaginings of somebody who's like schizophrenic or something. And he was the perfect character to put in that position, because you can't tell which it is no matter what he does, you know.
Yeah.
And he was a fun character to read, creepy as hell in a lot of places, but you know, despite being as unhinged as he was a pretty steadfast character for the most part, which I thought was a really interesting play.
Yeah. I definitely think that the Hatcher was a really good interpretation of the 5 stages, essentially. Um, it doesn't hit you right in the face with his character, but um, he goes through the metamorphosis of his loss. We start at the beginning, right, where he has no memory of anything, being denial, and then I'm not going to go through all of them, but he goes through all the stages, and I thought that was kind of neat, especially considering kind of the perception of psych wards being not really a place. I mean, especially like how Alice was treated, not really a place for healing, but a place to just put people.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mad or Hatcher was a good example of somebody who healed throughout the story. And I would say at the end is sitting on acceptance and ready to roll.
Well, yeah, I believe our chat has been way ahead of us on that one. With, you know, he's got such a bad, like a sad backstory, like Mrs. Score 16 said, and you know, as Stormy said, his amnesia was important to the story. So like, it was important that he was in a place where he wasn't supposed to be healed by that, because it played such a critical role as uh you know, having certain information revealed at certain times that kind of makes sense, because like you said, this is a place that they just put people to put them away. And the sad fact of the matter is historically speaking, that's how we dealt with mental uh illness and stuff for, well, up until relatively recently. And by recently, I mean like the last 50 years,
Yeah,
if that. Like, there is
I'd say
evidence that
even
that
less
stuff
there.
still goes on to some degree, sadly. But um and VS Drake, as you said, wonderful character growth for that guy, and to come to, like you said, to acceptance at the end, going through all 5 stages of grief, and not just going through them, but like completely manifesting them, especially anger. Well, and one of the cool things I think is that if you see him as an allegory for the 5 stages of grief, is that he cycles through all of them multiple times, except acceptance at the very end. And that's how the stages of grief typically go, is it's not a straightforward path. And I thought that was a pretty cool interpretation. And I like that you brought that up, Adam.
Yeah,
Um,
the Hatcher was easily my favorite in this book, just because he felt real.
all right, why don't we pull our next question from the chat? Stormy says, let's compare new city versus old. What are your thoughts on that, Adam?
Yeah, I thought. I mean, I would have liked more fleshing out of those, but obviously those weren't the new city wasn't our main setting, so obviously we didn't get a whole lot. And the times where we were in the old city, and it wasn't just about the characters. We obviously had a pretty narrow view, but we got a lot of data about Alice and Hatcher's previous experiences, which I thought is a cool way to flesh out the world other than just kind of explaining it. I've mentioned that in the past about like the Alchemist did a really good job of doing that. This book did too, where it didn't just say the characters walk down a dirt road with eerie trees. You know, they fleshed out the world really well with stories from their past, which is my favorite way of doing things. But I thought it was kind of neat how it was very black and white. It was New City is upper crust and Old City is poor and beaten down. I think we see that a lot in the real world, and we don't necessarily have like words for it, like New City and Old City, but it's definitely something like, oh yeah, you know, like this area of the town is, you know, the ghetto, or
Well, that's the thing, is our words for it, as far as I know, are I don't. Well, the ghetto is the area, but like the term for it, I believe, is gentrification, more or less. But yeah, class separation. That's a good way to put it, just in general. But yeah, did you have more on that, Adam?
No, go ahead with yours.
All right. So one of the things I thought that was interesting about having the like new versus old city is it presented, well, as we had said, some realism, like this idea that there is some outside force that forces people to live in darkness and in backhanded ways that lends to the types of characters that wind up in the old city, as opposed to like a blended city where like your extremes are probably not going to show up the same way that they do in these caste separated areas, and especially ones that are effectively ignored. But it also presents this idea of like like darkness and light in society and how it can be turned on a dime. Especially when they start talking about like how they use guns. Like the new city doesn't use guns, but they do. You know, and it's not, you know, as black and white as they're treated, it shows that even in those like portrayals of, you know, stark difference, there's a little bit of each element in the other, kind of yin yang style. But
Right.
it also forced, you know, it gave a reason to force them to to work entirely within their own means and not go to anybody else on the outside, because either they couldn't be trusted or they didn't give a shit. You know, so it was, I thought it was a pretty cool use of a pretty common trope of having like a, you know, really sketchy area and a nicer area used in a fairly unique way to help guide the experience of the characters. Yeah. Which is, I love when authors use a setting like that, you know, use it to their advantage.
Yeah, chat's talking about age difference between Hatcher and Alice. I definitely got that 20 years at least vibe too. Because if you think about it, Alice is extremely young, like barely an adult, and Hatcher has, at least as far as we know, at least a 10-year-old child. hopefully older considering how the story goes. But either way.
Well, that's the creepy thing, is sadly probably not. Well, I mean, older by the time we hear about them, but like when she was snatched. Ugh.
Yeah. Ugh. That part was
dark.
Yeah.
Super dark. Yeah, we need to get on those. We need to get on those trigger warnings way earlier. After I read that, that was actually, I believe I reached out to you guys as we were going through these books. That was one of the main parts that I was thinking of. That and the description of her rape, but like those two parts were like some serious trigger warnings there.
Yeah. I think so that is something I think Henry did really well with knowing when to back off. Like she didn't like what's the word? She didn't like dwell on those parts. Like she mentioned them and then moved on, which was nice because it is very hard to read about I mean obviously those topics, but like the combination of rape and youth and the fact that it was just kind of like a cultural norm for the old city is, you know, she did a really good job of knowing when to move on and not keep hitting you down with the bad feelings.
Yeah, but like she gave just enough detail for you to know just how terrible a person the rabbit was, and like how deeply upset you should be that that person existed at all, or that and that the conditions that allowed him to thrive. And yeah, like you said, did a good job of just moving on just in time for you to like let it sink in and be creeped out, but not so much that it became all consuming. Because honestly, you know, it's, you know, for parents, I imagine deeply disturbing. I work in the foster care realm, so also deeply
Yeah.
disturbing. And I think the other thing though that did is that gave us a reason to accept Alice rather than seeing the world as more real, leaning into the magic of her experience. You know, if you experience something that deeply traumatic and you know that that's gone on to other people and you were a part of it, even if she finds a way to live in the world and be happy and find love, like you want that for her because you're just like, you poor thing. I don't care if you are a complete loon. I just don't want you to have to deal with that, you know,
Yeah.
as long as you're, you know, not killing innocent people.
Definitely, yeah.
You know, so I thought that was a good use of that to like give us a reason to accept that move towards magical rather than, oh, that's not realistic. There's too many things that should pull her out of it. No, there's all the reason not to pull out of the fantasy.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to baddies. Let's talk about the baddies of the book. Specifically, we have Cheshire, the caterpillar, walrus, and the rabbit, and then Jabberwocky is the big bad. But let's spend some time talking about Cheshire, caterpillar, walrus, and rabbit. What did you think of each of those? Did you particularly like one over the other?
I mean, I think the one that played out the most like the character that we know from Through the Looking Glass is Cheshire. It's that kind of chaotic neutral character, or it well maybe a little bit towards chaotic evil or something in there, but like it's more chaos than actual evil. Like it's just I'm in it for myself, you know. So I think it was a little more easy to swallow that character, even if he was smarmy as fuck. um, you know, it's also a lot easier not to hate him because he was the only one who didn't eat people or rape women, presumably, anyway. Um, who knows what goes on with his magics, but so
Yeah.
that's the least hateable of the evil characters. But again, I think he was just kind of a chaotic, I want to watch the world burn, maybe
Yeah.
kind of character. So other than that, though, Caterpillar, I had a hard time like really being invested in the character of Caterpillar so much as just his actions. He was just another creep on top of a creep type of thing. You know, he was rabbit light and only who still had the psychic power, still had the magical powers supposedly. You know, so little issue there. Walrus, like, there had to be one meathead of a long, like, boss, like, as there is in anyone. Biggest reveal, obviously, being that he was the one that Alice was supposed to be given away to, and the other one who was there that night, which makes you hate him a lot, but I'll be damned if the rabbit wasn't one of the most villainous characters I think I've ever encountered in a reading ever. Like, you love to hate him, and you hate that you love to hate him. And, you know, like, when you have a villain that strong, I thought it was impressive that they were able to bring Alice up to a point where she could be a character match for him, not just a magical match, but like a character match for him. And that's a testament to how strong of a character Rabbit was, and we didn't even meet him until the very end.
Yeah.
It's all implications, little bits, little memories, and it was just pure rottenness, like the worst that humanity has to offer was that character. And yeah, so I thought that was done fantastically. So on to your thoughts. I'll start coming through chat because it looks like they're having fun with this one.
Yeah. So so Cheshire obviously was like, I feel like Cheshire was the smartest of them because Cheshire knew, like, Cheshire wanted to do whatever they wanted, and they knew how to, like, do what they wanted without going so far that somebody was going to kill them. And I think Walrus, Caterpillar, and Rabbit needed to learn that lesson a little bit from Cheshire, but didn't. I liked that Christina Henry kept their evil deeds separate. Like, each of them was slightly different. You know, Caterpillar tortured, Walrus ate, and Rabbit raped. I mean, they all had some crossover, obviously, but they each had their own, like, signature crime against humanity, which I thought lent credence to the story and kept it interesting, and didn't just make it like, oh, another baddie, but like, oh, this baddie's unique because they have this weird, stupid thing about them. I really didn't like the Walrus. That was just messed up. What a glutton, you know. But the rabbits plot, I gotta say, was the most infuriating because, you know, you get there and Alice is like, I'm gonna kill this mofo, and then the rabbit's like, I want you to kill me, and then it's like, oh, I gotta give him what he wants. Dang it. You know? Which is a very frustrating place to be, right?
Well, yeah, because there's none of that, like, satisfaction of, like, completed vengeance or even just justice because he's getting something he wants.
Yeah.
Like, he can even take that away, which would, again, makes him such a uniquely infuriating and terrible but also awesome villain. It looks like our chat. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Real quick about the rabbit. I think, you know, the build up to the rabbit was what was the greatest thing about him, because,
yeah,
you know, he had that just such a reputation about him, and the whole story, it was like, oh, the rabbit, and everybody, Alice and Hatcher met, were like, oh, the rabbit, and then they get there and he's all like, oh, fucking kill me.
It's like, I've been holding on for so long. Finally, somebody who has the balls to cut me down. And I'm like,
these fucking pansies won't do it.
It just makes you wish you could attach him to like an eternal nut kicking machine. Like, let that be your fate. But it looks like our chat has moved on to a very interesting topic, which I would like to talk about. Is that how did you feel about the Jabberwocky fight and demise?
Yeah, I honestly that was a huge turn away for me. Is the as soon as Alice had essentially a wish spell that she could use an infinite amount of times a day, and there was no cost, I was just like, oh, this is not good. This is bad. Go back to the rabbit.
Well, the way I saw it was a little bit different. I saw it as like, maybe it's just because of the perspective that I came into it with, especially with them starting in the mental health ward, is I saw this as a progression of essentially psychosis. And instead of moving away from it and finding reality, as V.S. Drake mentioned way earlier, Alice leans into the psychosis. And that moment, the Jabberwocky was never actually seen in its own body. It was always possessing something else until like the very end. And I always thought it was a manifestation of the worst sides of her, the worst impulses of the mental illness of herself and anyone around her. And I thought that wish spell type of thing was less about the Jabberwocky losing and more about Alice gaining control over her life and control over her mental state. In that she embraced something fantastical but found a way to live in a world with it by taking just enough control that she could take the darkness and tell it to fuck off, essentially. Like, I never saw the Jabberwocky as like the ultimate villain as far as like an actual physical conflict. I always thought it was very internal. And so the wish spell was the conquering of the Jabberwocky was the conquering of her own mental health and fear and dark impulses. Like, that was my interpretation of it.
I would have, yeah, I would have liked it though if it wasn't God mode. Like, it could have come down to something like Alice understands that the Jabberwocky can only live in the dark, and in order to defeat the Jabberwocky, she needs to pierce it with happy thoughts or some shit like that. You know, it felt very much like just to me at least, it felt like she's there and it's over. Like, she came to her realization that she can move on, and then that's it.
Yeah, it could have used a little more conflict in that respect, like a little more pushback from the Jabberwocky, like, I'm not gonna go down that easy, like, I'm gonna be resisted until you find, like, not just use your newfound power, but really like learn what it, not just like use it, but learn what it means to use it too. And that, as you said, when it comes without any sort of cost or effort, like at the very end anyway, I mean, to me, I saw the cost and effort being her presumed sanity. But that doesn't show up very well in the way it's written at the very end. So yeah, that part was a little disappointing, but like, I don't know, this felt like the kind of book that was just like, can't have it all, so some stuff is just going to be disappointing. Like, that was just that was a theme throughout the entire book, and it kind of just ended the same way. And just a little bit both fascinated and just a little bit frustrated, and that's like how I felt like through most of the book. And the ending was entirely different, but no different at the same time.
Yeah.
right.
What else do you want to talk about?
Let's see what our chat has to say about some stuff. Let's bring them into this conversation. Yeah, it looks like chat had a very similar idea about Miss Gollert mentioned that they wanted a little bit longer to, really establish the why of what she could do and give a true struggle with a clever twist at the end. There was the clever twist. It just because it would have been funny if it was as simple as just turning it into a butterfly, but it happened just a smidge too fast, and it's just it was all twist without the struggle.
Yeah.
It could or at least not enough of it, and but I still thought it was pretty clever to turn this big bad terrible thing that feeds on the worst fear and butterfly.
How come the Jabberwocky couldn't have been I wish I wasn't a butterfly?
Well, and that's why I think it's more a manifestation of Alice's view of mental health, is because if it were true magic, it feels like there would be something to fight it. I mean, again, without there being an actual cost. But yeah, you'd think that a character that spent the entire book gathering power would be able to fight back a smidge more. I mean, granted, they find out Alice was a magician who not only had her magic but stole the rabbit's magic too at some point. But I don't know, that again felt a little rushed. It was a little tough to deal with. Let's see here. Actually, we talked, I think the chat mentioned it a little bit, but what did you think of the use of the white rabbit in the ring?
In the ring?
Yeah, the one
in
that she
the
frees,
fighting ring.
Her what did you think of the use of what was his name, Chad, if you can remind me? I can't remember the name of that guy. Started with a P, I think.
Yeah, it was Pipsqueak or something. Pippin?
Yeah, something along those lines. But what did you think about a different white rabbit being tossed in?
Hey, Mrs. Skolart. The next book is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Read in the next couple weeks. It's another spooky book for spooky month, so it's probably right up your alley.
Yeah, and supposedly one of the best horror stories written in the 21st century. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
probably
20th century. Sorry, my bad.
Probably less mystery, more spooky, but there's probably a mystery element to it, so you might like it. We'll talk.
Who's doing the haunting?
Anyway, what were we talking about?
What did you think about the introduction of the talking animals, in particular the white rabbit that was found in the ring?
I think the talking animals thing was a good way to be no, seriously, this isn't just your psychosis talking. You're a magician, right? Pipsqueak or whatever his name was I didn't draw any parallels between him and the villain rabbit. I did take that as maybe that's the rabbit that Alice follows down the hole in Alice in Wonderland, and maybe it's not the villain rabbit.
I mean, yeah, kind of, but I thought it showed, honestly, her ability to not discern the difference between it wasn't just just because it's a rabbit, I'm going to freak out on it type of thing. Because I was kind of wondering how much of this was her just going on a rampage, and anything that reminded her of him or any one of the evil characters, she was going to kill them or flip out on them. And that was a good showing of, I can be possibly imagining animals talk while also, you know, not, you know, while discerning between good and evil. Like, it's not just me flipping out on anything that reminds me about it. Like, I can make this discerning between him and everything else. And I was not so sure of it until that moment, personally, because I don't know, it just seemed like everybody they ran into, you know, it wasn't technically her doing it, because half the time it was just Hatcher, just like, I saw red, you know. But I thought it was a good idea. I thought that was like a good foreshadowing of her finding control over whether it's magic or her mental health, like finding control in her circumstances. And it was subtle, but I thought it was really well placed. Kind of a slight foreshadowing.
Yeah. Let's talk about Via Strake's question. What was your favorite twist from the original story to this?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Because there were so many good ones. I mean, I'm going to avoid Hatcher just because we've already, you know, I don't want to rehatch that one.
I'm the dad here.
Still
see the shirt, I'm the dad. I don't know if you can see it. See the shirt, I'm the dad.
So, I mean, as good of a character as the rabbit was, it's not really a twist so much as like a complete mirror image. So I'm not really going to go for that one either. If you have one, feel free to lay it on me, because I'm just cycling through all the characters. And,
I'll go while you're thinking here. Cheshire for me. I thought it was kind of interesting to imagine Cheshire is not just some random stray animal that Alice comes across, but like a warden of the land. You know, it was cool that Cheshire had actual power instead of being somebody's pet. And the fact that in the end Cheshire takes over the entire old city, like I thought it was kind of neat and a good power play for that character. A nice twist.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. I was kind of avoiding the ones that were just like, well, I guess the power bit makes it a bit different, but I was avoiding Cheshire because I, you know, came into this expecting essentially like humans that had characteristics of the characters that we know. Honestly, I think one of my favorite manifestations was really the maze that Cheshire sends them into, because Alice goes through a maze in the original book, and it's treated as a little bit scary, but it's all like, you know, scary to be lost, but that's it. Like, there's confusing elements to it, but it was still just like a regular maze. And eventually Alice stumbles upon the Queen's hearts, and you know, it kind of takes away some of like the scary element to it. And I'm like, and then the maze really got turned in very subtle ways into this thing where, you know, it's actually dark and scary, and what you would think about if a child got lost in a maze. Like, those were all things that could very easily, like the thorns reached out and grabbed her, and that could just have been like, as a kid, an actual just thorn that just happened to grow out of place and it wasn't trimmed back. And in part it works because of what you said, though. So this might just go back to Cheshire, is his power is what caused it to, you know, have these elements that took something that is a subtle setting that is kind of blown past in the actual book and made it compelling. And I thought that was a cool twist for me anyway.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk predictions. Specifically, so what do you? So there's a second book, the Red. Was it the Red Queen?
I think so.
But specifically, I'm interested in Hatcher's daughter. How do you think that's going to play out? And do you have any other predictions? Chad as well. Do you have any other predictions about what we might see in the second book and how the story might progress?
I do think that they find his daughter, but I don't think it will be as simple as just finding her. My guess is there is going to be, other than the obvious conflict of getting to whomever it is that she's with, I think it's going to be tackling maybe a different aspect of mental health. Like we're talking like probably Stockholm syndrome level crap here on top of whatever trauma. So I think that they'll find his daughter, but his daughter, I think, is going to have more power in that area than they expect, and she might actually be one of the power players in a way. Like, and she's probably going to fight against them. Like, that's just my imagining of it. Yeah, the Red. I didn't want to say it outright, but yeah, she very well could be the Red Queen.
I had that exact same thought. So sounds like we're all in agreement that she might be the Red Queen.
Well, everything that the rabbit used to describe her describes her as some like higher tier person in whatever society she is. Like everybody talks about her, and she's the like seemed more than somebody who would have been sold into like just prostitution or slavery. Like there's a worshipfulness, I guess, in the. Oh boy. Hey, bot. Bye, bot. Banhammer.
Yeah. Ban.
Banhammer.
Get the f out.
Well, yeah, VS Drake makes a good point. She's probably the queen of something, but I don't imagine it's an actual governmental queen. I imagine it's probably at most queen of a tribe, most likely queen of like a gang, or possibly just like somehow created a brothel where she's like the madam and is that they're also secretly like assassins or something. I don't know.
Oh, I gotta imagine like the way the rabbit was talking about her. Like, I could very easily see her being, the rabbit's equivalent of that area. Like, I could see her being his like favored rape victim, and that giving her power because that rabbit of the area is favored towards her, so she has elevated status.
I mean, it's entirely possible. Plus, we've learned that at least in the town that Alice is in, possibly other places, at least in the slums, you gain power by taking over your rival's stuff. And it could be that she was in favor, took over for this guy who already had power, either by forceful or inherited means, and is now running the show. And I think that would be a very interesting journey that kind of turns Alice's on its head, where Alice was of privilege and became the victim and had to raise herself back up, and to start the victim, gain privilege and have to give it up would be an interesting turn. Yeah, Dark Mirror of Alice is a good way to put it. So yeah, that's my prediction for that. Oh, I do have one other prediction. I think I don't think we're done necessarily with the Vorpal sword.
Yeah.
Like that, the fact that it fizzled away in a river, either there's a reforging or something. I just don't see it being completely done.
Well, they kind of implied that Alice absorbed the power of the Vorpal sword.
Yeah, again, I see it. I just see it in my head that there's going to be some kind of reforging or remanifestation of it. I just don't think it's done. That's a hunch of mine.
Yeah. I gotta say, like, I'm curious what happens with Alice and her magical abilities for book 2, because, like I said earlier, she's unto a god now. Apparently, she can just make things happen, whatever she wants. I mean, she even said she could make Hatcher love her if she wanted. Like, you know, she can make reality bend to her will, and she can make others bend to her will as well.
Sorry, I swear to God, via strike, no. You leave Vin Diesel out of this. Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
So I'm really interested to see what Christina Henry does with Alice's magical abilities, or even if Alice continues in this story. It's very possible that she doesn't. I don't know anything about the Red Queen, but
yeah, if it has anything to do with finding Hatcher's daughter, I have to imagine she's going
gotta be right.
If.
Yeah.
But no, I think you're right. I think there has to be more conflict with her magic. There has to be something to push back. And maybe that's why we didn't see it in this book, is it was always meant to be for the next one, that it really gets challenged.
Yeah.
Oh, I would also be disappointed if there isn't some sort of execution style off with their heads moment. Just saying. Yeah, would definitely be disappointed if that didn't happen. And I predict it will. Like, there has to be an executioner, or yeah,
Something
maybe she's the
something
bride.
has to have some sort of headless moment.
Wouldn't that be super creepy if she wound up being like the bride of Ivan the Terrible and was the one actually like chopping off all the heads and putting them on spikes and stuff?
I mean, that could be. The second book could be Alice is the Red Queen and goes psycho killer.
Well, I meant I meant Hatch's daughter, but yeah, Alice could be the next Psycho Queen. We just don't know.
I mean, what's that saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Anyway, let's get to the wrap point here. What were your final thoughts, chat? Final thoughts?
I think my final thoughts on this are, I would absolutely recommend this for anybody who loved Alice in Wonderland and likes horror, because I thought this was a really good reimagining. It does have a few disappointing points at the end, but there's so much in this is so well done, especially for such a short book. Like, what, 8 hours on audio and less than like 250 pages? Like, I thought a lot of it was done excellently. Could have had a slightly better ending, but I think it's definitely worth reading, especially for as short as it is. And for anybody who loves creepy books, awesome. Obviously comes with the trigger warnings for anybody. But yeah, I honestly enjoyed it. And granted, I'm actually a fan of Through the Looking Glass, the original, so this was kind of cool to re-experience it in a new way. But I don't think you necessarily. I think it really helps to have read it, but I don't think you necessarily have to have read it. You could have seen the Disney movie and probably get enough out of this, but I think it plays a lot better if you read Through the Looking Glass and then read this book. My personal experience, anyway.
Yeah, I'd say this lands on would recommend. The darker bits are really rough And does kind of pull me away from a would recommend because, in my opinion, there's enough out there to enjoy for your entire life without having to touch those darker bits. But the darker bits do give you perspective, do make the victories more victorious, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
There's if we always lived in light, it would be hard to tell that it was light. So I understand the need for some of the darker themes, which is why I do land on would recommend for this book. I do think the writing, especially, was really well done. That transition from the psych ward to the real world was real rough, and I think Henry pulled it off. It's not easy to transition a story from such different settings like that, and I'm really happy that she pulled it off. And I liked all the characters and thought they were really fleshed out and had unique abilities that made them all super, super weird. So good stuff.
And it sounds like we have a resounding
host top fave in the last episode for the year. When's the last episode for the year?
The last episode
next
for
one?
the year is our next one.
Okay. So we'll have to think about our favorite.
Well, should we do it for our
favorite
last
books.
episode of the year, or should we save it for our first episode of season 2?
I like last.
All right. Yeah, so we'll do a top 5 from the last. Let's kind of, we're going to make note of that just so that we don't forget. Top 5 for next time. Right, and it sounds like everybody pretty much enjoyed the book. And yeah, there's real, it's one of those books that you really don't have to get into a lot of it. Like you can go really in depth into a lot of books talking about a lot of stuff, but this one, I think it did such a good job of like pulling itself together, that like, it's not that it was hard to talk about. It's just, I didn't feel the need to like take it apart with a scalpel,
Yeah.
like there was just, it was a lot of self-explanatory stuff. And I think even in this chat, it was just a lot of enjoying moments or talking about the ones that made us uncomfortable without having to like dissect it. I don't know, it felt kind of like, the difference between dissection and going through the maze. All right, so unless somebody in chat has something for us, why don't we go ahead?
I think we're wrapping.
Yep.
That was the last thought there. Guys, let's talk about future books. Okay. So we previously talked about our next book. I kind of mentioned it for School Art earlier. The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, read by October 23rd. It's going to finish out our spooky month. And then we are going to do Shorefall for November 6th. That's, gosh, who's that by? Robert Bennett. Shorefall by Robert Bennett for November 6th. Does that sound right?
That is very right. And to be clear, just to clarify, that this was our vote for the second book. All books were second books were the sequels to something that we have read throughout the year. So our first one for next year will be Shorefall, which was the second book in the Founders trilogy.
Yes, that's we didn't do that too long ago. It was only a month or two ago that we did Foundry Side. It's a pretty good book. Looking forward to the sequel. Just kidding. I already read it. It's good. You guys should read it too.
No way. I think I must now.
Yeah.
Good sale.
It's really good. A lot of authors I feel struggle with making that transition, especially young authors really struggle with making a transition from a novel to a series. And Bennett definitely pulled it off with Shorefall. So definitely join us and read Shorefall for November 6th. Other plugs. Let's do plugs real quick. DMstable.com is where you can find out all the information you ever wanted to know about the 800s and everything else we do. So check it out. It also has all the links to everything. So if you listen to absolutely nothing else that I say, go to dmstable.com. Below the video, we have several links that I want to direct your attention to. First one on top is Patreon. That's how we make money, and also how we figure out what book to read next. Most of our books come from our Discord chat, but then they make it into a list, and we post that list on Patreon for our patrons to vote on. So if you want to vote on our books to read next, go to patreon.com and find us at DM's Table. And if you want a suggested book, hit us up anywhere, anytime, and we would love to add it to our extremely long list of books to read. But like I said, Discord is the way to go because we chat all the time on Discord. YouTube is the next link on the screen here for Twitch. That's just we upload these videos as well as some other videos like our podcast, Roll with Advantage, which is a D&D podcast. It's super dope. You should check it out. It's on YouTube, among other places. And then we have socials, Twitter and Facebook. Facebook is at the DM's Table, and Twitter is at DM's Table. We post about what books to read next. So if you constantly forget what book you should be reading, check us out on our socials. Also, socials are a good way to get our Discord link because you definitely want to talk to us all the time. So you should get our Discord link.
Yeah, we are wild and crazy guys.
Yes, we are. Yes, you can tell. But this is
totally not trademarked.
Do we have any themes coming up, or are we just doing spooky themes and that's about it?
Spooky themes through now. I think we are going to continue our sequels into our next book through November, and then I think we are going to let December be back to original formula, just to give us a month to just sit in there, check out some books, maybe throw in a couple that didn't make the list. But if you have other suggestions, we're happy to take them at any time. We're going to keep it kind of light through those months. And then with the new year, we'll probably kick off some new themes, and we'll have those ready for you coming up. But for now, just start thinking about books that you like. If you have any suggestions, otherwise, we have a long list to pull from that, were books that didn't quite make the cut, but that we'd love to read.
Yeah. And just throwing this out there, I know a lot of people sign off when they start hearing plugs, but if you are still here, I wanted to throw this out. We've been doing this for almost a year now, and we obviously know how we like to run things, but if you guys have a suggestion about what would make our show more entertaining or more inclusive, definitely throw it at us either on our socials, Discord, or just pop it in chat during one of our streams. The big idea is to include everybody, and the best way to do that is thanks Danny Odin. Dan Odin. If you want to put a phonetic way to say your name, I'm not sure. I don't want to say it wrong, but I feel like I am.
But yeah, thanks for throwing it in chat there right at the end. I don't believe we've spoken with you before, but happy to have you here.
Yeah. Yeah, hit us with suggestions about what would make this more entertaining for you guys. We would definitely appreciate it and take suggestions into consideration.
Yeah, we love to hear. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. That'd be really awesome. you know, we do this for the fun of it, and you know, anything we can do to make it more fun for you guys, not just for us, is, you know, something that we're always willing to take into consideration. Again, as long as it follows our core principle of be nice or fuck off.
And read books. Be nice, fuck off, and read books.
That's totally secondary.
But yeah, the best streams are ones where people chat with us. So the more we can do to make you guys feel like you're a part of our group is what the way we want to go. So hit us with suggestions.
Oh, with that, I think it is time to bid you adieu. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. It was a fun one to read and a fun one to chat with you about. Loved having chat active today. Love to see more of that.
Yes, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next book, as Alex would say.
Oh, you stole it. How dare you?
Thief. I'm going to get back to my book.
I'm going to go drink my sorrows away.
Good.
You have a great night, too, Dane Odin.
Yeah. Good night, Dane Odin. I like that.